to that too, that you sort of have a few values that you want to go by, and you also listen to your customers, and you're going to make changes based on what your customers need, except when it conflicts with what your overall goal is. Is that kind of
yeah? I think the thing is that you have to sort of start inside out, where you first need to figure out what will make you tick, because you can probably build a successful business that people pay for, but you may hate your life. And at that point, is that really worth it, right? Like, sure, you have the money and all that, but this may not job, but and that's the thing. Like, customers may say they want X, Y, and Z, and you can build X, Y, and Z, and that may get anything, but that's not necessarily achieving the goal. And that's why it's important to know what your goal is and what your values are in terms of not just you, but as your company.
Okay, so when you say a good thing for everybody in this room to do that is sometime soon to sit down and in addition to all these things we're talking about tonight with using the word pivot probably 6 million times, would it make sense that they should just sort of write down what are their specific goals that they overall want to achieve? And I don't just mean with their product, but at a deeper level, because then they can know whether or not it jives with it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, and that's sort of the process that I went through, and I had a screenshot. I can
Can you give a specific example of when something that your customers wanted may have conflicted with what your core value was?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the products that Brain Trust & Company has is called Brain Trust, and the whole idea behind it originally stemmed around sort of a product that was around crowdsourcing. And it was something like Get Satisfaction or User Voice. I'm sure you've heard about those products. And that's the type of product that I was building, and it was called Recommend. And all the customers kept talking about, I want this public thing, and I want people to come in and vote and tell me what I should do next. This whole crowdsourcing, user-driven thing. Customers were there was a market there, but I decided not to go towards that way because I think that really good product innovation, really good decisions, come from a few good people, a few passionate people in a room working together. And that's where I pivoted away from what the market was telling me, where the market was like, look, I want something public, as many people as possible, crowdsource, I'll pay for it. Whereas there's something different here where it's like, no, Brain Trust is more about this private, tight-knit group of passionate people that can have meaningful conversations and drive product direction, or drive to make the next change in the world, or that kind of thing. And that was the thing where I was like, literally not chasing the money, where like the market was pointing one way, whereas it was going a different way, because that was much more aligned with what I believed in.
Do other folks here have examples, other panelists, of where something like that came into play, or where it was really important that they sort of had sort of their overarching principles before they just jumped into something? Anybody?
He doesn't have any principles.
You don't even know me. No, yeah, I mean, I think our fundamental core values play in everything we do, right? So I don't think it really is ever not there. But they're more about how you do things than necessarily what you do. So,
I think it's definitely important, at least from our perspective, that you keep a certain culture. So I would, it's difficult as an entrepreneur and as a business person and as a company to maintain and develop a culture. Your culture is a function of the end people in the room. So whatever those end people are, it changes. And I think what you need to do is make sure that you're a steward of that culture, and that regardless of whatever business that you end up morphing into, that that culture is there. So I would agree that that's important because it's going to create a certain type of environment. So I definitely saw that if you maintain certain cultures and certain constructs, it makes it much easier to change, which I guess I'll relate to in my diatribe.
I mean, I know that at least now that I'm out on the West Coast, I hear a lot of people talking about social gaming and kind of the issues with that.
What's that?
No, I mean, like, I'm just saying, I hear very regularly people going through that whole moral issue of, like, this is really working, but is it something that I believe in? Is it something I think is doing good for the world? And I think, not that you have to, build, like, products that are all, eco-green or whatever it happens to be. It is important that deep down kind of what your principles are. I know that we were just deciding on a freemium split with our product. We decided to give the free product, certain things that we wanted to make sure everybody had access to, because otherwise it might be better for money, but we wanted to make sure people were still using it, or a lot of people were using it. So we've talked about pivoting a lot. I'm curious. I mean, when you guys were all making these decisions about whether to change direction, was it something was there something you specifically looked for to know that there were customers that were pushing in that way, or did you just sort of wake up one day and think, I guess I've sort of notice that this is the trend, from the emails from our customers? Like, is it like one specific metric you are monitoring and you decided at a meeting, like this is when you're gonna act on this metric? Or is it just something that just, over inertia, you just kind of changed?
I would say it's just happened genetically. Like you get a gut feeling and then you test the hell out of it. And that's sort of how every pivot in our company has occurred.
Yeah, I would say from our perspective, we're fairly metrics conscious in terms of companies. So, I mean, what I encourage every startup to do from the beginning is set up your thesis about what you're going to be. There's probably a couple key drivers about what's going to drive whether your success or failure, and then measure the hell out of it, and quickly figure out whether or not those points hold true. So I think part of what drove us was not only looking at the metrics, and of course the most obvious metric as a business, because you're a business, your measure is revenue. And then the second piece that we looked at and said, okay, look, we're going to get a certain growth rate with this. And the second thing is just really understanding what you're good at and what your assets are. So that was kind of the second piece. So we saw that the direction that we were heading in was an incremental business. It was growing, but we were like, we're not using what we're really good at, what we're best in class at. And I think if you recognize what you're really good at and you have, a steady drumbeat of metrics that you're checking, there'll be this like gestalt aha, and you'll have some pattern recognition as these guys did, where you say, wait a minute, this isn't aligning with my metrics, or this is aligning with my metrics, and this is what we're really good at. You just have to constantly be looking at the same stuff.
Are there tools or techniques any of you guys use, to figure that out? I know that some of you have, more data and you probably build things in-house, whereas Paul and TK, a little bit newer startups where there's a lot more tools out in the market now. They're doing a lot of this testing right out of the box. Are there things you'd recommend for, what tools to use to figure out this information early? Figure out what your customers are telling based on either their clicks or based on their thoughts.
So for me, I just start out with pen and paper actually, just to kind of document those like the hypothesis about what it is I'm going to test. Then after that, whether if it's an online thing, for me it's usually like Google Analytics or something free. But if it's offline, actually, so one of the side things that I got into is I bought a bunch of gas stations and all things a couple months ago, and there it's all spreadsheet driven. I mean, you just kind of like guess at what will drive business, and it's worked.
Gas. It's your new product.
Petros here, actually.
Nice.
But it's not the gas to make money, is it, Paul?
No, gas is the loss leader. So I don't care where you buy your gas from, but buy your booze and cigarettes from me.
What is the difference between these two?
Yeah, I would say we built most of our tools in-house, but there are some really great tools out there. So like Google Analytics and those things are great, but to validate ideas, I think Facebook ads, Google ads are great. There's no such thing like minimally viable product takes too long. Like minimal viable idea is what you should be thinking about. Like put money and like just don't go to the bar tonight and take that $50 and go spend it on Google AdWords with the 3 names of companies that you think you wanted to start. Whatever gets clicked on more, that's the name of your company. Like print out, do a simple 1-page that does absolutely nothing except submit an email address that says, here's what I think my idea is going to be. So maybe some graphics, maybe not. Throw $100 in AdWords behind it, or Facebook ads behind it. If people click, cool, and if they don't, go find something else to do. Like that's really what's important. Is you have no clue what is going to work, especially on the web.
Yeah, I would definitely echo the follow the metrics. I mean, so you have to be careful. So I think we've a very data obsessed internet culture now, whereas like I would say when we started out, it was a new cool thing to make sure that you were metrics driven, and like everyone would talk about like viral conversion, viral this, funnels, blah blah blah. Now it's kind of almost like it's overload. Just keep it simple. I think as a startup, and I'm biased, I go towards, for a web-based startup, just to use an example, what is your business? Like just in one sentence. I mean, you may not know, but is your business going to be driven by advertising revenue? Okay, so there's probably a couple key metrics like how many units do you have, how many page views per session do you have, what's the average, I don't know, CPM if you're an ad thing per page. You measure those 3 things, and you do it all the time. And I would say for every business, if you can't write down what your business is in one sense, or think it's going to be, again, it's going to change, those 3 or 4 drivers, and then just have a little dashboard. No more than 1 page, and this is a discipline that we are religious about, often to my chagrin. one page that everyone on your team looks at all the time. And so like you'll start seeing patterns.